Oh my God, I am so excited today to be here with Melissa Brown, the Soul Love Coach. And Melissa, you have a new book out.
Yes, the soul surrender.
Oh my God, it's beautiful too. The Soul Surrender. So I have to admit, I've only begun to actually peruse it. So I just downloaded it last night, but I was like, we got to get this message out to people because you actually bring a very unique perspective. We've been talking about achieving success in business and in life. And from a mastermind perspective, what we know is things don't always work out as you hope, even when you're doing everything that you think you should be doing to be successful. So your book is about what?
The book is about letting go, really, of your method and your way. Because I think for us as professionals, sometimes, especially if you've been doing whatever you've been doing for many years, as much as we like to say we're progressive, we are very traditional. And we have our way that we get very locked into. And it's very hard for us to move from that because that's what makes us comfortable. And so the surrender, the soul surrender, is really an invitation to allow God, to allow a power greater than you to design your life and your destiny.
So I think what really got me excited about you. So when I left corporate America after 25 years, and I spent 8 years at IBM, 14 years at Disney, 5 years at Microsoft, I started a company called It's All Bigger Than Me Consulting. It's All Bigger Than Me Ministry. Like for me, it was like, it's a ministry of the mind. We get to decide what success looks like. Right? We get to do that by being intentional. So when you talk about surrendering to something bigger than you, right, that is my theme. So why is it so difficult for people to surrender?
I think because we like to have this notion of control. And, because control is really all about avoiding the unpredictable. And, really ever since 2020, I think 2020 really put it in our face that life is not able to be regulated and controlled, that things are constantly happening, even so much as yesterday. I mean, even so much last week, at the time of this recording, a shooting in Buffalo. Yesterday, it's a shooting in Texas. And as much as we try to calculate and predict how life is going to go, life is always happening. And if you are locked into this notion of it has to be this way, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. You're going to end up with a lot of resistance. And so as much as the word surrender tends to, in just, I think the regular American culture, it's seen almost as a weakness, but on a spiritual level, it's really a strength to be able to recognize I don't know everything. And my way may not be the best way. And as much as I thought it was going to go just like this, that God has the ability to switch it all the way around. And here's the thing, since Tracy, I know you love to talk about service, that if we are doing it in service to God, because we love to say that like, oh, this mission is bigger than me. Oh, this is what my life purpose is supposed to be about. And there's scripture that talks about, where God has says, can I put you on the potter's wheel? Can I do it my way? Or are you going to resist me in what I'm doing? Is it going to be, are you want to be God or do you want to be the people?
See, I want to be the people. Now, speaking of people and service, we have two people that are actually joining us in this conversation. And I see a lot of heads nodding. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on both Dr. James Carter and I'm going to bring on Dr. Melissa Commodore, who actually been a part of this conversation with us when we first brought you on. So welcome, yes. Dr. James Carter.
Welcome.
Dr. Melissa.
Yeah.
Good morning.
So Dr. Carter, introduce yourself again and tell me why you were nodding when she was talking.
Sure. So my name is Dr. James Carter. I'm the executive director for the Breakfast Group. I handle our signature programs, Project Mr., the Diversity Career Program, and the All Achiever Scholarship Program. I was nodding my head because the conversation made me think back to something from my childhood. I want to say the years 1972 or 1973. Quincy Jones comes out with an album, and one of the songs on the album is called Everything Must Change. And it is so appropriate for this conversation, especially when you say, hey, you have to be intentional and you have to give yourself to starting anew sometimes. You know, we're so used to being locked into doing the same things the same way over and over, but everything has to change. The way we do math has to change. The way that medical procedures are being conducted have changed. The way that teaching has been conducted has changed. Policing has to change. The way you cook simple meals has to change. But you really have to have that internal thought to say, hey, this time I'm going to try to do this a different way. And that's a big step. That's a big step. As a matter of fact, it's something that people might have to be taught how to do, right, because it's just not a natural reaction for us all.
I love that. And for Dr. Melissa, I know you set this up as a 30-day process. Yes. So it's, when he said you have to be intentional, you have to learn it and unlearn. There's some learning and some unlearning that's happening there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the format is it's a 30-day devotional because, first of all, it invites you to slow down. Because again, when we're so focused on our end game, and make no mistake about it, we have our own agendas, but God also has an agenda. And sometimes we're so focused on trying to get to point B that we lose the richness of the becoming between point A and point B. And so very often what we're wanting, like I said, we're just trying to get to the result, and God is trying to develop you.
I love that.
And so the 30 days allows you, even though they're very short devotionals, but they're rich in content for you to kind of slow down and sit down. And every day is centered around whether it's surrender your busyness. Because again, for many of us in this particular space, work is your drug of choice. So if work is your drug of choice, that when things are not going well, because y'all don't forget, I'm a therapist, so I know what we do. We pile our schedules on, we have endless obligations so that we don't have to deal with the disruption of spirit within. And so it intentionally slows you down so that you can hear. Not just go get another strategy, not just go to another business meeting, because for many of us who, particularly if you're called to leadership, there is a divine creativity that has to be downloaded to you. And so you're not going to go and get it and mimic it from, well, who's doing it like this and who's doing that? And maybe I could put my own spin on it. There has to be a level of creativity and uniqueness that comes from being still and hearing from a different level.
All I can say is how much I love that. I saw some smiles and some head nods as well. I heard you say there's a divine creativity that has to be downloaded to you. The process of downloading. Dr. Melissa, you were smiling as she was talking as well. I know you've been going on a journey and getting some downloads of your own, making some choices and some decisions. Why is this concept of slowing down to have a message and creativity downloaded? Why is that so important to you?
Well, thank you for having me on and having me sit under Melissa Brown and all her wisdom. I was nodding because, Melissa, you said something important. You said God has his plans and we have ours, and we're focused on the end game. And it's like my plan goes from A
to
B. No disruption. His plan does all this.
Yes.
And when that happens, that transition, when we have trauma happen during that, going from A, B, Z, D, Z, you mentioned something very important previously, was that you have to take time and rest and just kind of gather yourself and not be so busy, like you just said, to pile it on because we don't want to deal with the pain of what just happened. And so I've been making sure I'm conscious of that on my journey, to take that time and withdraw and deal with those emotions. So I'm not taking it into the next blessing, the next situation, the next opportunity. And then you asked me something, Tracy. I want to make sure I answer it. What was that question that you asked again? I lost it in between me turning on my mic.
But we call this flow, baby.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter where we thought we were going. We also, I like to say everything that I do is intentional and organic. So I always have a plan, but I also think I'm probably over activating on whatever he has for me. Is that a thing, Melissa? Like right now, I'm in such flow that I'm like, what you said? If I think he said, let's do a thing. I saw Melissa's post on Facebook that her book was out. I was like, let's do a thing tomorrow. She said, should we wait? I'm like, we should just go ahead and do it. And so that's to me in flow. Like this is what I do. Like we help to elevate voices. We get this out. Our people need what you have. If I have the opportunity to help one person, right, who can be deeper into who they were meant to be because of this work that you're doing, if I can help to get your voice out to a broader audience, I'm all in. And it is not about a one-time conversation. We're doing this conversation so that we can continue to bring voices forward and have additional conversations. And like this really is about changing the system, that we're all a part of. So we change each other, then ourselves, then we can be a part of changing our community. And that's really what this is about for me, changing the next generation, changing people's lives right now.
And flow is really what surrender is all about, so although, yes, Tracy, I pick at you about, girl, you just ready, always ready. But for me, I'm a bit of a type A, and I got to have my things all lined up. So when you messaged me, just a couple of days ago, I kind of was like, well, I have in my head how I want to move. But again, when you're being intentional about your surrender, if the goal is impact, is God allowed to do it in a different way than how you initially planned? And so even for me as the author to be malleable, I'm constantly saying to my clients, can you be like water? Can you flow? Or are you like a wall that somebody has to push around? And if we don't put you in just a certain way, then things aren't working right. I wanted to say something to Dr. Melissa, because I know you were talking the last time we were together about just job transition and even some of the traumas and things that we experience in the workplace that can create a residue. And one of the things that the surrender does is, again, it allows you to pause so that you can take a look at what are the soul agreements that put me in positions, whether it's I'm constantly being taken advantage of in a workspace where I'm not appreciated. And so while the system itself has its issues, I'm very aware as a clinician that we also come with our wounds. We also come with our own coping mechanisms. We also come with our, I have to be the best, I have to be perfect. I have all of the demands, like I said, spiritual contracts that we put on ourselves. And we kind of move through life. And I think the surrender really puts you in a space where God can strip away those things that no longer serve you. And so they even shine a spotlight and say, what are the agreements that I've made with myself that no longer work for me? And to really work through that and be willing to consciously say, I'm willing to let that go. I'm willing to surrender. I have to be at this place by this age. I have to be here. I have to make this amount of money because this is what success means to me. And to recognize, why did I create that in the first place? Was it from a space of wounding or was it from a space of love?
I love that. I love that. What do you think, Melissa?
That's right on point. Because I'm like, at 25, I'm going to be married, have a family. God's like, 10 years. He showed me a vision of I'd be in my 40s. And I'm like, I rebuke that in the blood of Jesus. And I'm 42. And I'm single. But I am so thankful.
Yeah.
I am so thankful he told me no then. So, oh, wow. I would have been probably divorced because of the pain that I went through and trying to maneuver through it. So I'm learning now at 42, it's okay. You know what? I am successful. I don't have to be married to be successful, even though I desire to be. I don't have to make $300,000 to be successful. I don't have to have all that money to be wealthy because I'm already there right now. So that's why I'm shaking my head at you, Melissa, around that. I'm going to strip all that off.
Yeah.
That stress now can come off of me, and then I can flow better.
Sure.
And here's this beauty. Before I hear the wisdom of Dr. James, I heard this yesterday and just shared this with my community. The promise that God gave you, it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. The promise is inevitable. The timing is God's.
Mm.
Yes.
So, because many times when it doesn't work the way we think and in the timeline that we think, well, maybe I heard it wrong, or maybe this is just not for me. But whatever God spoke is true. So the promise is going to happen.
Mm.
But the timing isn't your timing. The timing belongs to God.
There you go. There you go. I love when you said that people come to new things with old trauma. And some of that trauma might be related to failure, but sometimes a lot of that trauma can be related to success.
Wow.
And that's so poignant. The idea of learning to stop, to listen, and to regroup and to look at another direction when you're fighting your own trauma on how you achieved what you've achieved or how you've been able to make it from point A to point B. I think that's really important. I don't think we have that conversation. I don't think that people talk about that. I don't think that people are cognizant of that. I think people lock in on trauma being things that are associated with failure, being associated with behavioral issues, trauma being associated with tragedy, but the trauma associated with success is just as a distraction. It can be just as limiting, so to speak. So I really think those are some very powerful words and very powerful thoughts.
I love that so much. Melissa, were you going to say something?
Yeah. I just finished Viola Davis's book, Finding Me, and she speaks to that because, and you're exactly right, Dr. James, because with success comes so many other things that we don't talk about. We aspire to it, we want to achieve it, but no one's really talking about the pulling that happens when you're the one who made it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Whatever the made it is in someone's mind. And when there's pressure on you to stay at a certain level or to almost be superhuman and without any flaws because you're the golden child in the family or you're the sustainer. And that's a lot of pressure for anyone. Mm-hmm. And one of the chapters in the book talks about surrendering your mother and father. And I talk about, just because I've met so many people who have achieved, but underneath the achievement, which is an honorable thing, was a need of almost like to rescue their family. That when I make it, I'm going to bring everybody else along. And if I get to this certain level, that, I'm going to be the example. And it's hard to accept that just because a person wants to be healed doesn't mean, just because a person needs to be healed doesn't mean they want to be.
There you go.
And just because you're the one in the family who has made it doesn't mean that everybody wants to imitate you.
Mm-hmm.
And so and you can't be the rescue,
mm-hmm.
especially when people don't know, like you said, that with success, you can have the picture of success, you can have the salary, you could have all of the accomplishments and still be drowning.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody even knows it.
Exactly. With success comes that evaluation and reevaluation period that has to happen, or otherwise success won't last.
Yeah.
You know, and so to recapture your inner voice and stop and to listen and to gain insight on what's going on, and to give yourself to the idea that God might have a different plan for you at this place. He
Yes.
wasn't just planning on you making it to being successful. He had a plan on what you needed to do once you became successful.
Yes.
I love it. But what I love most about this conversation, I've done like 4,700 interviews, and the people that I speak to, surprisingly, a lot of the people who are successful, using whatever traditional terms you might apply to that, they come to a point, like you said, Dr. James, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, both of you, and Melissa Brown, that this idea of not only am I the only one, and not only do I feel like I might be in a position where I need to save or help others in my family, but oftentimes they jump on this treadmill that is, this is the way. Even I did that. I worked 25 years in corporate America, but fortunately along the way, I was spiritually sound. I was contributing to my community. I was volunteering. I was very purposeful. I was connected. But if you're not, then you kind of wake up 25 years later and think, what, hey, where's the true meaning, right, to our lives? And we talk about achieving success in business and in life. And we talk about surrender and service and those things that really matter. And so I think really understanding that there is a point of connectivity to achieving success through surrender and through service. So those things are connected, and finding your purpose and being intentional. It's all the things that we know. These are the chapters in my book, right, around achieving success in business, because it's like this is our conversation. This is the work that needs to happen. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah. And one other thought that I'm thinking is, because in the chapter that talks about I surrender to peace, and as it connects to, the corporate and professional space, I think we have a habit, without even knowing it, of constantly moving the bar of success. You are constantly grinding. You are constantly not acknowledging your success, but acknowledging or identifying where I need to be more. And then we wonder why we feel like we're not enough, because there's no celebration of what you've already done. And we're constantly wanting to say, okay, I met this benchmark. Now, how do I get here? And now, how do I get here? And like you said, if you're not careful, you will look up 25 years later and say, why do I still feel unfulfilled? Because it was all about the markers, and it was never about you, celebrating you.
I love that. Now, one of the things that I read in your book, the concept of, it says the soul surrender is the perfect devotional if you know you wrestle with the need for control, analysis, paralysis, and perfection. But Melissa Brown, sometimes people don't know. They don't even recognize that it's really a control and that they need to surrender. How do you help people that don't know that they're a control freak, or that they need to surrender? What does that look like?
Or that they're locked into that OCD.
Yeah. Well, and this is why, I love my work. I really do, because it requires a level of personal honesty. And for many of us, we can, it's easy to pick up a book, but it's a lot harder to look in the mirror at yourself. And when you're doing your personal work, you can't do personal work in isolation. This is why, and all of us know somebody, I'm sure, who it says, yep, I've done my work, and they are just as emotionally raggedy as anybody. And you're like, okay, but that's because they've been doing it in isolation. Healing requires community. Healing requires real conversation. And so I would challenge people to pick about 3 friends, people that know you well, and ask them, how do you experience me? No judgment, no defense, because you can pay attention to that, because that will tell you a lot too of what comes up when people tell you about you, what comes up when people offer you constructive criticism to help you grow? Are you resistant internally, even though you may sit there and and take it all in? But do you leave those conversations and say they don't know what they're talking about? And so are you willing to really hear how the people closest to you experience you so that you can come out of denial that, because we can easily walk around thinking we're something that we're not, or that there are areas that we have worked on that we may have worked on them in our way, but not necessarily in an effective way that works for relationships.
I love that. And I actually today I use that term, how do people experience you? Because I'm now a certified success coach with Success Magazine. But when I was moved here from Florida to the Pacific Northwest, I had an executive coach. Her name was Kim Smith, and she used that language. How do people experience you? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm amazing. I wasn't quite amazing, but there was some amazing there, but there was also some, Tracy is too much. Tracy is, like all the things.
Yeah.
I was so delighted to be able to, because I knew I was in a safe place and I knew that she loved me and I knew that it was about, I wanted to hear it and I wanted more. Then it became, I was ravenous. Like I just wanted more and more information because it was like, wow, eye-opening. Right? But that helps. That absolutely takes you to a new space to say, how do you experience me?
Yeah.
Right?
Get out of your blind spots. Get out of your blind spots and to be able to hear the areas that you may need to grow to really elevate your relationships.
Yes. Are there any other thoughts where either of you, I'm going to say anyone, someone has told you something about how they experience you, and can we talk about how people should manage that information to do better? Because for me, it was like, tell me more. What would you share for any of you?
I think one of the things that I stated before is when I look at myself, one of the things that I look at, and this is probably from the police department, this is probably from the military, is the inventory that I take is some of the negativity that I see. I say, I'm not going to bring that on myself, or I'm not going to project that onto the situation or to other people. And so in terms of reimagining who I'd like to be or what I'd like to do, I probably have to look at it in terms of not just how people look at me when things are going well, but then also when things are going bad, or vice versa. It's certainly an interesting perspective or something to think about when you're doing self-reflection. How do other people experience me? Because a lot of times we just operate on people experiencing us as great as we think we are, as opposed to how we really are, And, right. and at the end of the day, sometimes you're on the money. Sometimes you're knocking it out of the park and you're doing a great job. But that blind spot, some of us have absolutely no way of understanding what that blind spot is without asking someone to say, hey, let me have that constructive criticism, and then let me really have it, and I won't judge it, because otherwise I won't know. So
I love it. And Dr. Melissa Brown, you said healing requires community. And I do think a lot of times people go into themselves, and it's important to do that work, but it also is important to connect, to hear from others. You connected with Dr. Melissa Commodore, Melissa Brown, in community, in our presence, and we were all blessed by that. So when one person opens up and the healing happens, you're healing the community. That's why I do this work. That's why I say it's all bigger than me, and this community happens. I'm not asking anyone to do something that I wouldn't do. I've cried on my own webinars in the name of Jesus. Okay, it's gonna be all right. Right. And mostly it's tears of joy. Like I'm overwhelmed by how blessed I am to just connect with such amazing people. Sure. But that idea of healing in community, Dr. Melissa Commodore, you experienced that. Melissa Brown, you do that work. On Tuesday, April 5th, June 5th, June 7th, whatever the first Tuesday in June.
June 7th. Thank
you very much. On Tuesday, June 7th, we're actually bringing people in and bringing people on. I'm going to be asking who wants to do some healing. And then you also do some other things. So Dr. Melissa, whoever, either of you want, let's talk about that idea of healing in community. Did it make a difference for you, Dr. Melissa, to know that we were all there? Did you feel the group hugged as we were all nodding and leaning in? And then Melissa Brown, that's your technique. So let's talk about that concept. Melissa, Dr. Melissa, I'll go to you first. How'd you feel?
I loved it. I did feel very welcomed. I didn't know that existed. It was out there, but where do I find it? I happened to fall into it because I met you, Tracy, from a broken heart, that I met your friend, right? And she brought me into that community. And then from that community, I was starting to get healed, you know, from a relationship, first time having really a relationship, you know, and then I'm the trauma at my job, and Tracy brought me into this community. And so there was trauma after trauma, but there was healing after healing.
Yes.
Right on the money. He was right on it, instead of, okay, we got to wait some years. I'm like, I don't have time to wait 4 years to get healed. I need it today. Yes. Not just me, you know? And so it helped me out. And right now, till this day, I'm remembering, I hear your voice, Melissa Brown, you know, take that time to rest. Because right after that, I was like, okay, I got to do something next. I know I got to get moving. You know, man don't work, he don't eat. I was like, you're taking that out of context. So I had to make sure that I'm listening to what you told me in that community and how everybody embraced me and telling me, hey, take a step back. It's okay to have compassion on yourself. Give yourself some grace, give yourself some rest, and then move forward. So that to me, that did wonders. That did wonders. Awesome. That still resonates right now with me.
Yeah. And I'm so glad to hear that. That affirms me. And again, I think that's what community does, is that it creates a space where we heal one another with our voices, with our stories, with our shared experiences. And what community does is it accelerates healing. Sure, you don't have to be in a group to heal. You can go and see. I have folks that see me privately, you know, one-on-one. But when they trust me enough to say, you really need to be in this group, that's when you see the quantum leap. That's when you see the acceleration. Because what community does is it takes you out of this has only happened to me. And so in the same way that you see others who have experienced your pain, you will also see others who have experienced the healing. I love what you just said, Dr. Melissa. Yes, there was injury and pain after pain, but after every pain, there was also the healing. So thank you, Tracy, for being the conduit for saying, I know where you need to go. And, you know, so again, I was just doing a Facebook Live about this earlier, where put yourself in proximity to power. Put yourself in the area of what you need. You know, I was talking about the woman with the issue of blood, and it's like, if you got to crawl, however you got to get there, you got to get there, because working on yourself can only take you so far. But you become like whatever you're around. So if you are around people who are growth oriented and elevated and accelerating, you can't help but go higher too. You have to. It's law.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that even with just that small experience, Dr. Melissa, it was such a lift. It was a lift. And so imagine if that were what you were around all the time. And here's the last thing that I'll say, because Tracy, I know part of your mission, you're really nurturing leaders, that we have to bring that sense of community into all of our organizations. It must be intentional. It doesn't just happen because we brought a group of people together. It is up to us to create the culture of safety, the culture of honesty, the culture of growth and elevation. So that people feel safe enough to grow and expand.
Yes, and yes. I
Beautiful
love
words.
that.
Beautiful
I
words.
love that so much. What I also read in your book was a little bit about, you know, what happens to you. And this is, again, I was blessed. I have to admit, someone told me early on that I was the child of the creator. And I was like, ooh, awesome, right? So my growth personally has kind of been I had a slightly different mindset, I think, growing up. So I've always been very positive, and I've always believed that everything happens for me, not, you know, and not to me. And you write about that in your book. So when things do happen, and a lot of people are experiencing the most traumatic time in their lives with COVID and job loss and family loss and all the things, but just changing your mindset with the knowledge that this is happening for me, not to me. Something good can come out of everything. Talk a little bit about that. All heads are nodding. What would you all say about that concept?
I know, the phrase that comes to mind, and I'll just say, y'all, I'm a preacher too. So that's just the way it comes out. But, a lot of times what we think is devastating is really destiny. You think it's devastating for you to lose your job. What you don't know is entrepreneurship is right around the corner waiting on you, and that nothing is wasted. So while we may feel like, oh my gosh, I wasted all that time giving my best years, because again, we label things, my best years to this company, my best years in this, whether it's a marriage, a relationship. And, I'll go back to Toni Morrison's Beloved, your best thing. Your best years are in front of you. So there is no, I gave all myself away if you're still here. And so if you can open yourself up and surrender to love, you can create more. You can create, because as much as whether it's a job or whether it's negativity or people we feel like can take from us, no one can take your essence. No one can take it. It's unique DNA.
I love that. Dr. James, I heard you smiling when we said, everything happens for you, not to you. And you've had a lot happen in your life. You've done decades in the military, decades in police. You've seen some horrific things in your life. There's just been a lot that has occurred. And yet you're the most joyful, happy, intentional, purposeful, full of service dude I've ever met. So how did you make that connection between, like you said, you're a role model, you want to do what you want to see? Tell us about that.
I think I choose to carry a lot of the positive life experiences forward. As you mentioned, there's been a lot of negativity, and the time to dwell on that is at that moment, and then you have to let that go. I mean, of course, we all go through the phases of grief or issues or problems or things of that nature. But at some point, the step in the direction through that trauma or through that difficulty has to happen. And on the other side of that is an understanding of what you've come through, an understanding of what positive outcomes or what positive steps that you can move forward with that to give to not only yourself, but to other people. And so that's, in terms of being intentional, for me, that's an intentional choice. I could be upset about the things that happen in life, or I could, I can move on. I know a lot of people don't know about my personal trauma, but having lost both legs to below the knee amputations, my choice could be to just say, well, I can't go any further. This is the end of the road, and I will only be judged by all the work that I did right up to this point, and that's that. Or you can make the conscious decision and the conscious choices. If I'm still here, it's because he has something else for me to do. He has somewhere for me to be. He has something for me to take care of. And so I carry that mindset. I say, I got stuff to do. When it comes to working with these young men and women in the high schools, I've got stuff to do. When it comes to working with my own young men, I have a 30-year-old and a 24-year-old. And with them, I have stuff that I have to do. So, I'm going to carry the positive with me and move forward and get it done. And then when I have the opportunity, hang out and play some golf with Tracy and talk to you ladies about your book. And more importantly, appreciate the community that we're enjoying right now, because you all have given me the title for my first book, which is The Trauma of Success. So
wow,
there you go. So,
and did I mention I'm a book coach as well? So we about to get this book done.
Right.
You don't put nothing into my universe, all my stuff get done. So we about to get
in the
that
right
trauma
place at the right time, having the freedom of mind to recognize it. So
awesome. Oh, I love that, Dr.
Say that one more time.
That's the beauty of community right there, the acceleration.
Yes, it is.
Wow. It's I think we might be at your bewitching hour, Melissa Brown, is that correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
are there any final words that we want to add, y'all? Remember, this is about achieving success in business and in life. We're using this to continue as a continuation for our community, feeding into our community. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. James, go to you, Dr. Melissa, in with you, Melissa Brown. And we're just going to put out there that action-oriented message that you heard today that you want to put out into our community. What is that one thing that you would suggest someone do as they focus on achieving success in business and in life? Intentional, surrendering, anything we talked about today, what would you want to share?
Sure. It's been heard many times just in this conversation, and it seems to be the buzz or the catchword, but it is just fire. Be intentional. You have to be intentional. You have to decide, you have to be decisive about what it is you want to do, what you want to accomplish, how you want to help, how you can be of service. And then you have to be intentional about getting it done. Just saying it isn't enough. Just writing it down on paper is not enough. Just talking to other people about it is not enough. You have to take those steps, those action steps to get that done. So
I love that. As a certified success coach, you know I'm all about that. I mean, to me, that is, if we could drop the mic and end this conversation, everyone is committed to that idea of we decide what success looks like, and we get to decide and we get to create the success that we want by being intentional. I love that. That's a key part of Melissa's book as well. Dr. Melissa Commodore, what would you like to share with the universe?
All things work together for our good. And so you mentioned that, Melissa Brown. And so if I'm in a bad relationship to where I got out of it, and I felt like, oh, I wasted this time, and anything I put in that relationship, God's going to give me in my next relationship.
Yes.
Because we reap what we sow. So I know that even my bad decisions I made in life, God's going to work it out for my good. So I don't have to live with regret. And
Absolutely.
so everything works for my good. I like what Melissa Brown said, things don't happen to me, they happen for me. So if I'm starting this girls program and maybe my boss from my job tried to talk to the people and messed it up, it was for my good because God said, you were going too low. I need you to go.
Yes, that's
so
it
now
right
I'm
there.
realizing things don't happen to me, they happen for you. And so the last thing is the example of COVID. When COVID hit, it did affect a lot of people, and it affected some people more negatively than positively. But that was the time where I got out of that. That was the time where I had such an influx of money that I've never had in my life.
Yes.
During the time of darkness, I said, what?
Yes.
Yeah, your timing is so.
Yes. Show you what's possible.
Yeah. And so it doesn't matter the chaos or the trauma that's went on or it's going on around me. Yes. I know that positive is going to come out of it, and it's happening for my good. So
absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, like as Tracy was saying, we could just drop the mic right there. Yeah. Oh, the only thing I will add to it is flow with it. Flow. Stop resisting. Stop trying to go against the grain because you are just stuck on the way you think it needs to be and should be. And life just becomes so much easier if you become like water and flow.
Well, I was going to talk about flow, but now I'm going to talk about gratitude. And so the power of gratitude. So for me in this moment, I am grateful for each of you. I'm grateful that I have been living in flow, and I'm grateful for this divine destiny. So I just want to say thank you to each of you. Dr. James Carter, for just showing up with your morning voice on.
And your new book.
Right, exactly.
Just give me a couple of months. Give me a couple of months.
Yes. We got this. Dr. Melissa Commodore, being vulnerable and open, intelligent as always. And then Melissa Brown, author of the new book, The Soul Surrender. Thank you all for joining us. More to come. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So did you stop the recording?